Hey guys, Stealth here. Welcome to Wargame. I may not be playing ranked anymore, but some people still are. And we have Honeybuns versus Narco Baron here. Both of these guys are Brigadier-Generals. They're the big guys, the big guns. They have been to hell and back, and they're still here. And this is exactly the type of guys who can create some amazing gameplay. And that's exactly what you're going to see here. We're going to be following Narco Baron. He is using a USSR deck, so is the enemy. That's the only thing I'm going to tell you. The map is the famous old map that we all know and that we've played on countless times. We have a couple of wide open zones here on the left. Charlie for easy capture for red team. Blue team, easy capture Echo. Then we have that tree line and the Bravo position, which is usually quite heavily contended. Alpha, once again, more easy for blue to defend, and then we have a bit of open stretch where sometimes on both sides you can get a flanking attack. For now we're going to be following Narco Baron, and Narco is going in with an interesting combination of units here. He's dropping off a command infantry unit, also has a couple of T-72 M1Ms, so these are equipped with the ATGM. Tatra 148 with reconnaissance infantry. Over towards the left flank, he has a T-72S, a couple of BVP2 VZ86. And over towards the right, some infantry, once again in a motorized and an IFV transport. That's basically all he seems to have points for. He's filling out the deck or filling out the units a bit more. Interestingly, he's starting out with a Pram S, and this one is the mortar variant, meaning that he can immediately provide mortar support to any location that might need it. In order to deal with enemy helicopters, he has the PLRK S10M, and for a bit of reconnaissance and spotting early on, we have the Mi-2, although the Mi-2 isn't very fast, and with that you got to be really careful. Now note that the position of his command vehicle is not where you would usually expect it. Normally people park it back here, somewhere in this tree line. He's going for a bit of a reverse bluff on that. Because the last position where you would normally expect a command vehicle is up front, so that's exactly where he's putting it. So to make sure that artillery or random artillery firing will not be as likely to hit the position. In the meanwhile, he's reshuffling his position a bit. He has the lonely OT-62A there. A couple of units have been deployed or redirected towards this flank in order to secure a hotel and potentially push into Gulf, depending on how much opposition is going to meet. And we're off. The Mi-17 is immediately zipping along, dropping off its command infantry. And of course the Mi-17 is still a very potent helicopter with the S-13 rocket pods. These things are remarkably effective against both transports and infantry, and can even stun tanks, depending on how heavily the tank is armored. So with the command infantry being dropped off, we're going to switch to the transports here. So far, contact is low, but don't worry, once the game is actually kicking off, we're going to be zooming out and zooming in every once in a while when the going gets tough. Center's been secured. That's the command helicopter back there that dropped off the command infantry. For now, with his motorized transports, his wheeled vehicles, he's pushing fast and far, just in order to get the first drop off on infantry, whereas mechanized vehicles would not be as fast, being tracked vehicles, they just don't have the same speed. We have an Mi-8 MTV coming in, as well as a couple of Ural 375s, which are immediately taking fire from the T-72s. T-72s, however, are in turn taking fire from one T-80U that we can see, and some other ATGMs are coming in to meet these tanks head on. So right away these tanks are being forced to go on the defensive, and where he does have a nice spotting position, he's immediately threatened by a BMP-T, which in turn is forced to retreat by the T-72s. Now, with a very quick response, he was able to kill off the BMP-T, and, through smokescreen, save his T-72 M1Ms, so they're still secure, although some of them are quite heavily damaged. And I personally would not want to put these guys up against Spetsnaz GRU. Between the three of them, they have sufficient firepower, but we know that there is also something along the lines of a heavy tank. And this thing, unfortunately, was not able to kill it, so the tank is still there. Over on the left, he has his position secured. He is pushing forward with reconnaissance infantry as well as some standard infantry. And I gotta stand corrected, he is in fact not using a USSR deck, but a Eastern Bloc deck. I mistook those two. Over on the right he has one group of Panzerinovci. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but I'm sorry, all of these symbols are a bit a bit confusing to me if I'm not using them in my language. The T-72s are fighting for their life against the against the Spetsnaz here. BTR-90 pushing forward, and the last survivor is now pulling back. And we can finally see what exactly it was that was firing those ATGMs next to the T-80U. It's one or multiple BMP-3s. Now these things with their Arcans significantly outrange the sphere that's mounted on the T-72 M1M here. So he does not have a lot of options other than to pull back. Take note how Narco Baron has a +2. He's gaining points pretty quickly, but he barely has control over the middle area. Center here is very, very weak. It's defended by one guy and two more survivors from the Panzerinovsky squad. We have one semi-healthy tank towards Gregory and Cheriton, which is forced to retreat, does not have any optics, and is constantly threatened by ATGMs spewed by those BMP-3s. And the only other unit that he is currently pushing forward is an Mi-17 with a bit more infantry inside. Unfortunately for him, the Panzerinovsky have now been taken out with a combination of BTR-90, Mi-8, MTV, as well as some supporting fire from the tree lines. So while he may have the points, it is not at all secure if he's going to be able to hold on to these points for a significant amount of time. He deployed a couple of concours here, potentially to intercept any kind of transport or tank that may decide to do a little bit of pushing here. However, his only recon unit is this one. It so far has not been detected, or the blue team thought that it might have been killed off. They're still there, and unfortunately that's about to change. They're now taking sniper fire from the Spetsnaz, and they are not likely to survive that. And with that, the PTR concours just become a whole lot less useful. They just don't have the line of sight of their own in order to do some damage with that ATGM. Now Narco is pushing forward on the left, attempting to do a bit of reconnaissance there, unfortunately sacrificing a T-72 there to it. And evidently there's quite a bit of supporting fire from BMP-3s, potentially a tank, because there's still one T-80U unaccounted for. That means that his infantry is once again doomed. There's not a lot that he can do to keep those guys alive. So with just one tank, one group of infantry, one transport and one AA unit on the left, and one group of concours, one Visotkari 90, a tank and a couple of transports on the right, there is not a lot that he has to defend the areas that he does have. Meaning that blue can start pushing more command vehicles into the zones that are currently definitely behind blue 4 lines. Unfortunately, another Tetra died right here, so that means we have some unit up front. Probably infantry, and my bet would be the Spetsnaz infantry. Now, in case you're wondering why I'm not showing off the neutral viewer, I like not knowing everything. I do watch these replays in advance, but I feel that not showing off all of the units right from the get-go shows you, or gives that atmosphere of excitement of, oh, I don't know what unit is where. And this is basically what Narco is seeing. So pretend that you're looking through his eyes and trying to fight along him. And fighting there definitely is. The ATGMs have finally gotten a kill, but the Visotkari that were pushed forward into this structure have unfortunately been killed off. A combination of BTRT fire from multiple vehicles as well as infantry pushing on these guys just was way too much for them. To make matters worse, we have Spetsnaz coming in right on top of the concours and the command infantry, and that's even worse. There's not a lot that he can push forward in order to counter that. He does have a shaken squad of infantry here, recon infantry, But the command infantry has been detected and is now taking fire. Not just from the Spetsnaz, but also from the supporting vehicles. And BMP-3s, when they're left alone in the open, can do a lot of damage. As not only they have the Arcan, but also the 2A70, delivering a lot of HE damage at a range of 2450, which outranges any kind of tank that we have, unless it's using some sort of HGM. Su-25K was able to take out the T-80U, unfortunately pays dearly for that and goes down, so no more anti-tank plane, unless he decides to buy another one, but I don't find it that likely, considering that he has to do everything in his power to just hang on to the zones that he has. So he doesn't really have any points left to buy units such as anti-tank snipers. In the meanwhile, his command infantry is in more or less smoke cover, but is constantly forced to move. And this is more or less costing him points, in the sense that he still has the +2. Honeybuns still hasn't countered with any kind of command vehicle. But his position is so fragile that once these guys are gone, the next command vehicle is at risk, and that is his last CV. So with centered down, the last CV is very much at risk, and the game could be over inside, let's say, 15 minutes. However, the units that are being put forward by Honeybuns are taking a lot of fire and have either been already damaged or have been previously panicked by either rocket pods or flight missiles. So these guys are not that confident about pushing forward. They are quite confident about the position of the command infantry. And a group of Specialny Jadnotki 90, good as they are going to have a hard time just trying to defend these last 3 guys in their command squad. There goes the last couple of Spetsnaz. The BTRT is also taken out, thanks to having it already been damaged before. There's the BTR-90, got killed as well. We have some Sapri sitting at long range, which should be a perfect target for the Specialny. Especially, you want to keep these guys at range. You do not want to have a flamethrower coming in close range at you. And we have another one coming in. I wasn't quite sure what that was, but it looked like a wheeled vehicle. Something that the T-72S should be able to take out. But look at that. There goes your command infantry. Not exactly sure what the hell that was, so we're going to very briefly, sneakily watch what that may have been. The only reason I can imagine that this thing was killed, this infantry, is that it was the Tor, so the AA unit that fired, missing the helicopter, and instead the missile detonated over his command infantry. If that's true, then that is one of the unluckiest command infantry losses that I have seen to date. I've seen aircraft crash on top of command vehicles. That is rather unlucky. But having an anti-air missile just completely ignoring the target, or having the target already been taken out, and the missile just dropping out of the sky right on top of command infantry, yeah, that was lucky, because no BMP-3 with the 2A70 can make a hole that size. That must have been a larger HE explosive. Now, Honeybuns has not been sitting still. He captured Elena, he captured Anna, and with that he is very, very quickly gaining on Narco Baron. Especially since Narco Baron has lost his own 2-point zone. So Honeybuns is very, very quickly catching up. And while Narco is pushing forward more units, what he really needs is more command vehicles in order to negate that +4 that Honeybuns has built up. Gregory has also been captured, but it looks like he's not quite sure of the command position yet, and I think that the command infantry is still moving towards this structure here, as they were probably dropped off by this Mi-8 MTV. Over on the right we have an engagement between Vizatkari and VDV, definitely in the advantage of the Vizatkari. And over towards the left the action is limited, but that is a good thing for Narco, because he barely has any units left. We have a BVP-2, we have the Recon Infantry, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce, and one group of Concours Infantry, which probably has its line of sight obstructed by these structures, so it isn't that useful in this position. What we can see is trouble on the way. T-80 If only these guys could get a side shot into that tank, it would be turned into very expensive scrap metal in no time. It is probably either out of range or being blocked through line of sight by the buildings or the tree line here. Vizitkari are pushing forward, being escorted by a T-72S and some more motor streltsy. Unfortunately, the Su-25K, I think that is his second tank sniper that was called in to deal with the T-80 got knocked down. And with that, he potentially has lost the last and second, or the second and last of his command, or his tank sniping helicopters and aircraft. So with that, he could be in a lot of trouble if the enemy is going to field a lot of super heavies, because the only other way that he has to kill them would be to use the Concours M. Vizitkari have taken a bit of a beating, same goes for the T-72S, but there's more T-72s coming in. These are the T-72Ms. Lots more, a lot less expensive compared to the 125 points. You can get 2 of these and still have change. But they still have a very, very good gun to support infantry. The 4HE that we have seen other ranked people use quite often in the past. Strela 10M, duking it out with an Mi-8 MTV, but unfortunately losing out to the rocket pods. The helicopter took 1 hit, survived, was not panicked enough to throw off its aim and instead killed off the AA unit. And he's immediately pushing forward a Strop 2 in order to deal with any further helicopter incursions. Talking of which, we already have the next helicopter presenting itself. And unfortunately, he has a lot of ground forces here, but nothing that can deal with helicopters. So he's basically just going to have to wait until this guy drops off its cargo before he can actually dispatch with that combat unit that might be inside. The ideal situation would be to just shoot it down and either kill them off or inflict some damage on them as they have been dropped off. We do know that there is some sort of vehicle over here, definitely a tank. If that is the T-80 then at this range the T-72s actually have a decent chance, because they're so close that their gun has such an armor penetration power that they will definitely be able to hit and hurt that thing. But the tank is pulling back, probably aware that it's being spotted. It's going to safer ground. In the meanwhile, we have an engagement between the recon infantry and the Spetsnaz crew. Spetsnaz are stunned, and now, with the help of a helicopter, it's suddenly a 1v1 until the tank shows up. There's the T-80 So we know that the UM, or that a UM, is still over there, and that another tank, potentially another T-80, possibly a T-80U, is over on the right flank in Boris. Now at this point, Honeybuns and Narco Baron are quite even on points, but Honeybuns is gaining, and gaining fast. Narco is just trying to hold on to what he has, which isn't that much to begin with, and this means that he's not that likely to be able to defend or capture Cheriton, or push forward into Boris. Because while he has inflicted significant losses on Honeybuns, he's not quite home free yet. There are still a lot of forces standing between him and either capturing Boris or even pushing it to Anna and taking out the command vehicle there. All the while, Honeybuns just has to defend his own areas, making sure that he keeps that lead, even if it's just a +1, and just casually drip in the victory. He doesn't have to do that much short of defending. Now the lack of AA is becoming abundantly clear here as a T-72 M1M is taking fire from an Mi-8 MTV. Unfortunately, the helicopter is not quite able to do a lot of damage, and this thing is just a bit worried, but otherwise perfectly alright. And interestingly, some of the helicopters are just hovering here, almost menacingly taunting Narco Baron here, looking at him like, hey, you don't have any AA, do you? And that could potentially be a problem, because if he continues with that lack of AA, then helicopters could become more forceful and could become more dauntless into pushing onto his flanks. Now a couple of BVP-2s launched Concours missiles, Concours M. I saw both of them hit, but the tank did not explode. So we definitely have a high-end tank there. And I think that I just highlighted it as we were looking at it, and it still has 1 hit point left. Now finally Narco has been able to capture Cheriton. He was able to free up some income to buy another command vehicle. That puts Honey Buns at a +1. That is still not good, but at least it's more survivable than the +2 that he was facing. So for now, he still has quite a bit of hope in order to just try to turn this game around. He's putting forward a lot of new infantry. Two triple stacks of OT-62As with potentially more Pentrianovci in order to push into Boris here. He also has some tanks that are taking on repairs wherever needed. And unfortunately, the infantry that's inside this structure is once again taking fire from a BTR-90. T-72M1M pushes forward, struggling with the tree line, and unfortunately the infantry dies, so the BTR has no further reason to display its position, and the tank is forced to retreat instantly. Correction, infantry did not die, but the BTR-90 was just forced to retreat. Potentially due to an RM-70, which is a standard HE damaging unit. It does not carry napalm nor cluster munitions. It's just there to stun the infantry, vehicles and tanks that are still alive in this tree line. So that he's basically buying himself some time in order to defend the areas that he does have. He's already bringing in a second RM-70 as the infantry is getting ready to push out. All of those OT-62As are getting ready to go. Now, Spetsnaz Gru spotted, as well as the T-80UM. He still has the concourse. The tank takes one missile directly to the front of the tank, thereby not taking a lot of damage, but it is damaging the infantry instead. And now it displays its side, and there we go. It was just trying to reverse back into cover, and one missile from the Concours M took it out, and this thing immediately turned the Concours M into elite units of HEGM infantry. So, the right flank seems to be quite heavily secured. Let's hope that Honey Buns doesn't push on the left. And to make matters worse, Honey Buns has now captured Boris and is once again at a +2. So with this, if nothing changes, Honey Buns is going to win this game in, I'd say, 10 minutes at the most. So it's time to make a push. Time to get ready, time to start knocking these guys out of Boris. Once again, rocket pod artillery fires, damages all of the infantry that is still inside that tree line, so that his own infantry has a much easier time pushing forward, and they're not pushing alone. They have T-72Ms, T-72S for support, as well as their own transports. Although OT-64Cs are, as far as their HEGM goes, not really reliable. So they can absorb some damage, and they can be quite effective in dealing with infantry with their machine gun. But otherwise, I would leave the killing off enemy vehicles to either your tanks or the Pentrianovcis, which are currently engaging, pushing forward, killing off one unit. And I believe that they didn't actually get the chance to fire. The T-72 probably was the one that took them out. Over on the right, lots of HEGM, autocannon fire going into this transport, so we know that there is definitely something there. Potentially BTR-90, or something that has medium stealth, so potentially a reconnaissance unit with an autocannon. Mi-8 MTV, once again going unpunished. Now it's taking fire from the Straub 2, but not before it took out 14 of the 15 Pentrianovci that were pushing out through the open here. And just look at how this guy makes use of his tanks as well as his infantry. Morskaya Pekota are usually nothing to sneer at, but these guys are just pushing through without a lot of difficulty, until they run into a command tank. T-80 UK, 200 points. Let's see if we can kill that. It is down, there we go, thanks to the T-72M as well as the Pentrianovci, but they are now heavily engaged with 25 Morskaya Pekota. It does mean that the command unit that was capturing Boris is gone, and thereby Honey Buns only has a +1, but there it is, it's still a +1. We have a new command vehicle coming in the rear, as well as a couple of T-72Ms as an escort. So he is definitely going to Boris, and going to Boris to stay there. He wants to hold this zone and neutralize that +1. The units that he does have taken a bit of damage, might need some resupplying in this near future, because they have expended quite a bit of their ammunition. And look at that, isn't that nice? An enemy resupply truck just being surrendered to the enemy just when you need it. But Boris is not empty yet. We still have more Morskaya Pekota. We also have a couple of BTR-80 and a BTR-90 trying to escape this area as fast as possible. T-72M does not agree with that statement and immediately took out the BTR-80. BTR-90 is making speed and just getting the hell out of there, in reverse, no less. But with that, it is potentially still capable of providing supporting fire, if it can still spot anything. And that last little bit I'm not too sure about. I don't think that it still has any spotters left here. And there's the command vehicle racing into Boris, capturing the zone, and turning that +1 into a +none. Making sure that Narco has bought himself a bit more time. Again, note the command position. He is not putting his command vehicle somewhere in the back where you would expect it. He's putting it pretty much squarely in the middle of the zone. And with that, once again going for a less predictable position. Now unfortunately he lost a unit over here. He lost a tank and potentially more Pancherinovci, but we already have more of those coming in. He's now firing at Gregory here in order to neutralize and suppress units that might think of pushing out. And in the meanwhile, those T-72Ms that were spawned in with the command vehicle have finally arrived and are pushing with a couple of standard infantry units in BVP-2s to make sure that they might be able to assault Anna. At which stage, the Honeybuns guy would not have that much in the sense of income. One OT-62A is taking the lead, just basically probing, seeing if he's getting shot at. Currently, nothing so far. So the rest of the vehicles are starting to move up. Tanks are joining the party. And that's of course once again when an Mi-8 MTV joins the party. Which means that once again there is very little to no AA, short of the autocannon fire that is currently scraping the paint off the Mi-8 MTV, but doing little else. And just look at how uncontested he is here. He's basically just walking right into this zone without encountering any kind of resistance. Because the resistance that he did encounter is still in the tree line here, as well as one Gorno squad over to the right there. Skrezhat takes a bit of fire, panics, but is still alive. And these tanks, in the meanwhile, have bigger worries. They're once again taking fire from an Mi-8 MTV. And once again, there is no AA to save the day. So unfortunately, the Mi-8 MTV is able to take out one OT-62A and the other one gets killed off by the VDV. T-80A pushes forward from Honeybuns. Pancherinovci trying to use their RPGs to best effect. Once again, an impact there. But so far, this thing is not anywhere near dying yet. Unlike the Pancherinovci. These guys are doing a lot worse. Fortunately for them, they still have a lot of backup from the BVP-2s and the T-72Ms and some OT-62As. But it's not the last squad, and a fresh squad of VDVs just takes out the Pancherinovci. So we have 14 minutes left in the game. The score is 377 for Honeybuns versus 208 for Narco Baron. Meaning that if nothing changes, this is going to be a significant victory for Honeybuns. Fortunately, Narco still has some fight left in him. And the T-72M takes out yet another T-80. I'm at this point rather certain that Honeybuns has little other tanks than T-80s. They must really like the speed and maneuverability of those units, which definitely have their effect. They can really be useful. But they are also rather expensive and pretty fuel hungry in that regard. Another salvo of RM-70 batteries firing at this position where we last saw the VDV. He's continuously suppressing those infantry units, and meanwhile making good progress to pushing onto Gregory, which apparently is not what Honeybuns was expecting, and he's retreating on all fronts. He's trying to get more forces into Anna, trying to get multiple units into Gregory, and in the meanwhile, the T-72S is dealing with the Spetsnaz that are again fleeing from Gregory and potentially running right up to this other T-72M, but they are unspotted, so for now they can enjoy the safety of their stealth, which probably won't last for very long. There we go. Over on the right, he has a bit of a position, let's call it a beachhead position over here on the right side of Anna. He still has some tanks, but the tanks are not quite capable of dealing at long range with the T-80B that we can see over here. To make matters worse, there's a Gorner Strelke unit coming in, which is also using ATGMs. So again, these tanks are in quite a bit of trouble. And unfortunately, I didn't highlight it, but his Strop 2, you can still see it here, died after a VDV squad from over here took a shot at it. And once again, he's left without any kind of AA. Little under 12 minutes left. Still a massive victory for Honeybuns if nothing changes. So Narco, what are you going to do? Well, he's making good progress in Gregory. That's good news. He has a +1 after killing off the command vehicle or command infantry inside this structure. And he's now duking it out with another T-80A, which are casually firing HGMs at each other. Unfortunately, the other T-72 is a bit distracted and potentially wouldn't even be able to fire at the T-80A due to the inclination of the terrain here. T-80A almost down, but that's when an Su-25 joins in and immediately takes out the tank. He, however, pays dearly for that, as a MiG-23ML swoops in, takes out the Su-25, and that should make this area a bit safer for his tank operations. Strop 2 also didn't fire. It probably wasn't quite in range yet, but it should deny this area to any further helicopter operations. Over towards the front line, we have a lot of units gearing up for an assault. 20 Pancherinovci are now pushing forward, and I usually emphasize not using quad stacks, but apparently he does not agree with me on that end, and it is working for him. He just killed another T-80. Unfortunately, the next T-80 is too far away, but it seems to be retreating due to a couple of OT-62s, which, with their machine guns, have absolutely nothing on a tank of this caliber. In the meanwhile, a couple of Vizetkari are being killed off by a BTR-80A duo, as well as a bit of infantry. So let's see if the Pancherinovsky can do anything about that. And you'd say so, but they are now all out of fire support. They were previously operating here with the support of a couple of tanks, but the tanks are all gone, or have been forced to retreat, or are just plainly no longer existing. So now the Pancherinovci have to fight for themselves, dealing with Morskaya Pichota as well as VDV, meaning that they are heavily outgunned, heavily outmanned, completely shaken, and pretty much deceased. There we go. No further Pancherinovci. A fresh squad is being brought in, but if these guys heard what happened to their brethren a couple of meters up ahead in the woods, I would not recommend that they push forward. Towards the left, he is bringing in some more reinforcements. He's still combing the area with the Specialny Jetnotki, pushes forward the T-72M, and the Strop is finally able to deal with a helicopter, as he's dropping off a command unit in order to deal with Gregory. So now he has a +1, soon to be a +2. Will that be enough? Can he, in 8 minutes, get a point lead that is enough to make it into a victory for him? For now, we also have some more reinforcements coming in. We have a triple stack of OT-64Cs, and we have continuous fire from the RM-70s, which are being resupplied both by Colossus as well as the FOB. And look at the FOB. In a 1v1, you usually don't expend this much ammunition, but he's already expended over 12,000 points of supplies, constantly keeping those RM-70s firing. And with the constant barking of those MLRS systems, he's suppressing where he wants to go next. or suppressing areas that he doesn't currently have control over. The T-72 that he had over in the middle unfortunately died, and while he is pushing forward some infantry, they barely have any kind of backup. So this is more of a picket line than anything too serious. Finally, Honeybuns returns fire with a bit of MLRS of his own. This one, however, is the burning version. We have napalm dropped on the infantry, which, while they are panicked, have fortunately not taken any kind of damage and are still completely combat worthy. This command vehicle is moving a bit, or at least it wants to. It's stuck in the mud, and it is not stopped, and therefore not generating any points. So he's still only at a +1. It's not where you want to be if you have 7 minutes left. Morskaya Piechota coming down the line, walking through their own napalm, running right into Specialny Jetnotki and consequently dying very, very quickly. But we have another barrage of napalm incoming. This time going squarely for the command vehicle. By some miracle, everything around this command vehicle is burning. But the command vehicle itself is completely safe. It has not taken any kind of damage, and I would prefer it if it keeps that way. He is retreating the CV a little bit. He's moving it towards a different end of the command zone, because not only do we have napalm all over the place, but we also have a counter coming in. BTR-80As and a T-80B, and the command vehicle, there we go, relocated and reassigned. Can the survivors of this napalm attack still defend against a couple of support units and a tank? We're about to find out. I'd say not at this range. In the meanwhile, survivors from potentially the Pancherinovsky fight over in the forest towards Boris and Anna are now coming down this ridgeline, running right into the Specialny. And whereas the Specialny previously were in a good position to engage, as they had the numbers, right now they don't. And they are in fact losing. That means that once again his command vehicle is at grave risk. And to make matters worse, we have 3 BTRTs, potentially with infantry, coming in with their grenade launchers and their Dushkas, which means very, very significant amounts of firepower approaching the command vehicle. And, just when you thought that the Sneska might be able to help out, a T-80A joins the fight, and this is very, very easily able to kill off the Sneska and the command vehicle. So the command is pulled back in order to make room for the T-72 to do its bidding. T-72 kills off 1 BTRT, retreats, making sure that the napalm infantry cannot do any kind of stunning damage to it. VDV are still fighting over Boris, still engaged with Vizat-Kari, and there's the tank. T-72M versus T-80A. Both have taken a lot of damage and both fire at the same time, causing a sudden death on that end. On the right, the enemy is still pushing forward more tanks. T-80Bs, BTR-90s coming in for fire support, and a Scratchet, which is also something that you would rather not expose your infantry to. There's not a lot that Narco Baron has left at this point. He's reeling from all the impacts that he's taking. T-72M is pulling back. He no longer has that T-72M1M, but the enemy still has the BTRTs as well as the infantry that came with it. Right now, the T-80B is heavily punishing the T-72M, but it barely made it into cover. Shaken, but alive. Another tank takes up the front line and pushes back towards the enemy, killing off a transport that just came down this road, potentially either killing off or heavily hurting the infantry that was inside. And once again, an artillery battery hits the position in Boris, hoping to get the kill on the command unit. However, if that is another T-80 UK, then it's going to be utterly unimpressed by this pretty show of lights. So hopefully, he's able to push forward in order to deal with whatever command unit that there might be. Otherwise, with 317 versus 377, he's not going to win. And this is something that I was alerted to lately. If you are doing a conquest game and you want to have at least a minor victory, you need to have 10% more points than the enemy. So he needs to get to 415-ish if he still wants to win this one. Can you do that inside 2 minutes and 45 seconds? Or are we going to see something else here? Is this indeed going to be a defeat for Narco? Because currently the lead between Honeybuns and Narco is definitely good enough for Honeybuns to win this fight. Vizetkari with a group of 30 guys pushing forward. They are making headway into Boris as fast as they possibly can, but the command vehicle is still way out of reach. They still have to get there inside of 2 minutes. Can they do that? Vizetkari pushing forward. We even have a bomber coming in, MiG-29 912, which unfortunately doesn't quite make it out alive. You can see it going down there. It is able to put a heavy napalm load down on the infantry. Unfortunately, not all of the infantry was impacted by that. And just as he wanted to start pushing, he's once again deterred by a napalm artillery strike, which heavily panics his infantry, panics his tanks, takes out transports that were in backup, as well as, once again, his AA unit. Whatever is he going to do? Another napalm strike comes in, this time hitting squarely the Vizetkari, taking their numbers down from 27 to 3 in just 3 quick salvos. So there's very, very little left of this push. But here we go, he has no other choice. If he wants to try to turn this game into anything that resembles a draw, he has to neutralize this zone. So despite the napalm, or maybe in spite of the napalm, thanks to the smoke cover that it's putting up, he's pushing forward his command unit, neutralizing the income of the zone, and once again slowly dripping points. He's pushing forward everything he has left. T-72Ms are rushing forward right into enemy tanks, so the T-72s are not likely to live very long. But by the looks of it, he was able to take out the command vehicle, thereby putting himself at a +2, so he's very quickly gaining, but inside 30 seconds he's not likely to overtake Honeybuns. Another vehicle gets taken out as more tanks arrive on the front line, another group of T-80Bs rush forward. And there's just 15 seconds left. If they get the kill on the command vehicle, which they just did, then this could be all over. He still has a +1, because the enemy no longer has control of Boris either. But the game is up. What is the result? It's a draw. 343 versus 377. Do the math. Narco Baron made it possible to get just 9% less points than Honeybuns. If he would have had 342 or 341, it would have been a defeat. So he was extremely close, and that last couple of ticks just saved his game. Incredible. And in case you're wondering, yes, we have seen this guy before. This is the same guy that we saw with the incredibly close game that he pulled back, and he just did it again. Narco Baron once again was able to get the victory, or get the defeat turned around into a draw, and previously he was able to do that into a victory, so extremely well done. Honeybuns, you too, thank you for this replay. It's just amazing to watch these guys work. These incredibly close games, these I'd say make the best videos, and I hope you guys agree. So if you do, give it a big thumbs up, give it a like to let me know that this is indeed the content that you want to see on the channel. If you have any thoughts that you want to share, the comment section is open. Keep it polite, keep it neat, and I'll be happy to read any comment that you put up there. And if you have something like this in your replay folder, then be sure to send it in. The link to do so is in the description down below, and I look forward to casting your replay next. So thank you for watching, have a good day, and I'll see you soon for more videos.